Hi, Suzanne. So good to have you here in the podcast.
Hi, Jana. It's nice to be here. It's fun that you did my podcast and now I'm doing yours. This is
I
exciting.
know, and it was like a surreal experience because we're going to talk about later, but Suzanne has a long time podcast, very well known in the field, the Left Brain Artist podcast. And she also is an artist. So we're going to talk a little bit first about your art and then we can talk about the podcast. But it's such a pleasure to have you here. And we also discovered that we are practically neighbors.
Right. Yeah, we live very close to one another. In
Yes.
fact, she was saying, I go to Target. I said, yeah, that's practically in my backyard.
Yeah, that was amazing. So,
Yeah,
how life works.
right,
Um, that I get to talk to you when I finally come to Florida. So it's really a kind of, I feel like a circle moment.
right.
Um, but let's talk a little bit about your art. So tell people what kind of art do you do?
Okay. Well, I do acrylic painting and I use brushes and paint pens. So my preferred brand is the Posca paint pens,
Oh, yeah.
which I love. I just love those. So what I do is I put down a background of paint, lots of different colors using brushes, and I use the dry brush technique where and I'm mixing colors right on my palette. And when I say palette, it's a paper plate. But that's what I put the paint on, and then I just kind of mix colors there, and then sometimes I might squeeze paint right onto the
Yeah, I'm here looking at
canvas.
the
And
art. So beautiful
yeah,
art there.
yeah, thank
Oh,
you.
now I see. So you use the pans, and that's why you have all these little details in your work.
Right. So the illustration part is with pens, and my subject is generally flowers and
Just
plants.
like me.
Yep, I love painting that.
It's
And
wonderful.
I always say that the flowers are inspired by what I see on my walks. I do a lot of
Yeah.
walking through nature areas in Palm Beach County, Florida, but then they come out of my imagination. So you'll see a flower that has 13 petals because I just kept making petals. And, you'll see a blue flower in a different shape. So every once in a while, somebody will say, oh, I love your, I think somebody complimented me on my bluebells one time. I didn't even know what a bluebell was, but apparently I drew that. I painted that.
You
So
know,
yeah,
I and
I kind of make up my own flowers and I'm inspired by what I see.
and I also hear in Florida, definitely Florida has a different kind of nature. Especially
They
for
do.
me that came from Washington State, very different kind of nature.
Yes.
But I see some flowers here. Well, first of all, let me just a disclaimer. If you're listening to this and you're a good gardener, I'm sorry, but I know nothing about names. But my goal is now that I have a backyard is to learn about flowers and do my.
Yes.
But when I do in walks too, I see such different shapes of flowers. I wish I knew the flowers. I actually am thinking to get an app. I saw an ad that there's an app now that you can just take a picture and you recognize the plant and tells you the name and tells you how you should take care of it.
Oh, that's cool. I
And
like that.
if you are having any kind of issue with the plant, the app can say to you, "Oh, this is going on too much water, or you need more water,"
Oh,
and so. But I see such unique shapes here when you have
yes.
flowers.
And what's interesting is I grew up in Cocoa Beach, Florida, which is only a little over 2 hours north of here. But when you look at the growing zones in the United States,
Yeah.
Palm Beach County is below the tropics level. So we're considered tropics and Cocoa Beach isn't. It's the next level up. And so even just 2 hours away, I see completely different flowers that I never
Yeah.
grew up with. So that's kind of fun. And we have out here, we're basically, I don't know if you know this, but we're basically on the wetlands, on the Everglades. And they've just built houses, they've built it in. So we're very, very wetlands, and we see all kinds of wetland birds
Yeah.
and swampy things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you always started with painting flowers?
No, as an artist, well, first of all, I never called myself an artist growing up because I had just so many different interests. I was always doing crafts and all kinds of things,
Right.
but never like painting. And I always equated being an artist as somebody who could paint or draw exactly what they see. And I was always drawing made up things and abstract and chosen colors of my own. But I also did a lot of crafts. So I just thought of myself as crafty. But then when I started in the art world, so to speak, I was actually making jewelry. So I've made jewelry my whole life. And that's how I entered the art world in Palm Beach County, is by making jewelry. And I started showing them at outdoor shows, with the tent, that whole thing, and indoor shows. And then I just started taking classes. So I was taking classes for fun because I've always been interested in trying new things. And then I started the painting, and I probably started around 2010. That was probably my first online class. And most of the classes I've taken are online. And I started painting. And so when you take a class, you're pretty much painting what the teacher is telling you to paint, and you're using her style, and but you're trying to develop your own style. So you paint. I painted all these canvases, and it didn't ever feel right until I got back to it in 2018, back to the painting. And I got inspired again by watching Instagram and seeing people who did the 30-day projects or the 100-day projects. Yes. Right. You've seen those. And people will pick a theme. Everyone does it differently. And so I followed this one artist, who is it? Oh, Robin Marie Smith. And she was doing collage, and but it was like painted papers that she then tore or cut up to then make collage. And so she did one every day for 100 days.
And I remember that.
Yeah. And so that inspired me to start making a collage. And I talked to her later because I ended up interviewing her for the podcast. And she said, oh, yeah, they're like 4 inches by 4 inches square or something like that. I said, you're kidding me. I didn't realize they were so small. No wonder you could do one every day for 100 days. So that really impressed me that, first of all, you don't have to do anything large. And the more you do something, the better you get at it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do a whole bunch of something. And so I started with paint and gel pens, and collage. And so that's what I started with. And I made 16 in a series, but then I made a bunch of other ones too. But 16 were like a same subject matter. And so I just kept painting, and I loved these jelly pens that I used, and found that they were permanent. And that's important to me for many reasons. You want your art to be permanent, but I'm a lefty. And so when I use pens, I erase it with my hand. Do you know what I mean? So when you write with your left hand, you're just kind of rubbing it on the side of your hand. So I need to find pens that dry quickly. So I really found I love these jelly roll pens. And those were ink, of course. And then I found the Posca paint pens. And of course that's paint, so it doesn't dry as quickly, but I learned how to hold it differently. So my hand was above the page and it wasn't just rubbing against it. So I love the acrylic paint by brush with the acrylic paint by pen on top of it.
Do you use more the fine tip? Is that what you use most?
No, I mostly use the bold tip for Posca pens. And the jelly roll pens might just be fine details that I add to it later. Yeah. So in 2018, I just started painting and started on paper. And then I found this product, canvas paper. All right, do you know what that is? It's a pad of canvas. Yeah. And I wanted to get the feel of painting on a canvas, but of course it's expensive to use a 2-inch or 1.5-inch deep gallery wrapped canvas when you're still exploring and figuring things out. So I started painting on this canvas pad. I don't really want to call it canvas paper because it's not paper, it's actual canvas.
Yeah.
And so that was great because that was really inexpensive. You could buy a pad of 10 sheets for $10, $1 a page.
And for people that are listening, I'm going to put on the show notes, but you can, buy on Amazon, and there is a brand called Frederick's. I used Frederick's, and also Strathmore has canvas pad.
Do they? Yeah,
Yeah.
I find it at Michael's Crafts, but then they're also at Jerry's Artorama, but I don't remember
Yes.
the brand name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but I buy usually on Amazon. And what I like about Amazon is that it has the subscribe and save. So then you get extra
Okay.
15% off.
Oh, nice.
So I receive automatically.
Oh,
And you
great.
can skip if you want a month, but you don't have to keep ordering.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, but they are wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's what I started doing. So then, and then I moved toward doing canvases, and I did this. I had this 36 by 36 inch canvas, which is quite large,
Yeah.
a gallery wrapped canvas, and I had painted something else on it, and I just never felt satisfactory. It never felt satisfactory, but I had a lot of other canvases from when I was painting a few years ago, where I just never felt like I had found my style. So this big 3 foot by 3 foot, I said, okay, I'm going to paint the background, and then I'm going to use the pens. And I did the whole thing illustrated with flowers and leaves with the pens. And it took weeks to do this because it was just so large. That was like my breakthrough. I said, okay, this is my style. This is what I want to do. And I think it was because I did something so large after experimenting on all these smaller canvases.
Right.
Then I did large, and I committed to it and worked on it and when I say a couple of weeks, I mean, it was, in your hours, your free time. It wasn't like I worked 8-hour days.
Do you believe it was your constant practice that took you there?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So in 2018, I painted 125 paintings.
I mean, it's wonderful because if you think about it, it's not a long time ago, right? And if you think about some artists struggle finding their style for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And
and I really had back in 2010 and 12 when I started taking classes. So I put it away. I was kind of discouraged, but it was the 100-day project where it's like, yeah, okay, I could do a little bit every day. Yeah. I could do something little every day. And
I think that was a great idea.
Yeah. So I bought these pads. I want to say maybe they were like 11 by 14, but then you can cut them in half and just work on a small thing.
I was inspired by the 100-day project, but not in 100 days because
I never did 100 either.
Yeah. But with me, still having a young child, it's hard.
Yeah.
But I did this. I got a sketch mixed media book, and my goal is to fill up that book with acrylic paints because it was my journey to get my piece with acrylic paint. And excellent. I just discovered so many things. And I still have some pages I have to finish, but I had to stop because of my moving. But I think this practice that you have, and you have a goal, right?
Yes.
But did you feel, while you were going through that process, did you let your frustration, you were thinking a lot? Because sometimes many people struggle with that. So I like to talk with artists about that so people can relate. How was your, that middle range to get there? Did you feel frustrated many times, or you were like, okay, I'm getting this, I'm getting there what I want, I'm feeling happier and happier with what I'm doing here?
Well, I think the key was that I moved to that canvas paper because it's very frustrating when you're painting on a gallery wrapped canvas that you spent $50 on or more, and you're frustrated and you're not getting it right, and you don't like how it looks, you don't want to hang it in your own house. That just opened things up for me so much by using that inexpensive canvas pad.
It's just like paper. It's not paper, but it feels like paper.
Yeah. So it took the frustration out of the equation, which was nice. Yeah. So I was using paper sometimes, but mostly this canvas paper. And so I was satisfied with the feel of the canvas and the way the brush was and the pens were moving across canvas. I was learning, like what you said, you discovered things. I was learning how the pens worked on canvas, because canvas is rough because it's like the grid, the weaving. The fine tip pens for the Posca pens don't work as well because they get caught on it, and they skip and kind of spit across the page. So that's why I said, okay, so I like these bold ones. So each step was a learning experience. And so I learned what worked. The other thing that I did is that's when I started Instagram. And I thought, I'm going to put every single one on Instagram, whether it's good or bad or whatever, but I'm going to have a consistent putting things up every time I finish one. And lo and behold, strangers were saying, oh, I like that. Oh, I like that. And so that helps to take the frustration out of the equation too, when people are complimenting you.
So do you have also personal Instagram other than the podcast?
I do.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes. So my personal Instagram account is Suzanne Redmond Art.
Art, okay.
And then my podcast one is the name of the podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, I started putting it on Instagram, and I also did this set of 16 collages that told a story. It was based on some letters that were written to my grandmother 100 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. In fact, I started it in 2019, and the letters were written in 1918. So 101 years ago. So that had a story, and people really got interested in that. So that helped people interest, because they wanted to know what happened next in the story. It was, she got a series of letters from a man who was a friend of hers, and she was in Oregon, where my mother's from, my mother's mom. And he was in France in World War I, and he was writing to her. And it told this whole story. Then she discovered that he was married. And I remember asking my mom about it. I said, well, why, if he was married, why was he writing to her? And she said that when World War II came, and she thinks World War I was the same way, people just wanted to be married so they'd have a girl waiting for them back at home. And so a lot of people got married even though it wasn't connected. The one, they were. And so he married this woman, and then later he really wanted to talk to my grandmother instead. So anyway, it's a great story. I won't do any spoilers if you want to look at it. Well, the spoiler is I'll tell you the spoiler. The spoiler is he got shot down and killed in the war. He died, and then she still kept getting letters, and it was just this whole thing. Yeah. So anyway, I made collages out of all those letters, and I think because that had a story, people got interested in it. And then I just started doing abstract pen and paint, and it didn't need to do anything.
Yeah, so I see here in your website, so you also have abstract art.
Yes.
And also what I can see is that now you do them on big canvases, right? You have a 48 by 30 here work.
Yeah. I do a lot of big canvases too. Yeah.
So
like I said,
to do that jump was scary, because many artists are afraid of the big canvases.
Well, I think I started with my biggest one and did fine. And so nothing else could scare me, because I started with a 3 foot by 3 foot. I mean, I know people do a lot larger than that, but that was huge to me.
Yeah, I just heard a podcast of a painter. She does just oils, and she paints just in this 4 by 4, 6 by 6 board. Yeah. And she was saying that she's terrified of big canvases.
Right.
I guess if you're so used to just little pieces, it must be scary. But my problem with big canvases is I love them, and if I could, I probably would be just painting big, because I think they give you such a freedom. But my problem is space, like where you're gonna storage all that.
Well, you don't store it; you hang it on the wall.
No,
I've got probably 20 paintings hanging on my wall in my house. Yeah. Well, I have one room that's like my office / art room, where my computer, the room I'm in right now when I'm talking to you, and I just hang up whatever can fit in this room. So this room is really crowded and busy, and lots of paintings.
Yeah, I have a wall.
I'd rather have them on the wall.
I have a wall here that soon is going to have all the art. But so I see here that in your abstract art, before that, how did you decide that, like, okay, I'm doing these flowers, I got my style that I like, I'm doing these things with the pens, and I would advise people to go to our website. I'm gonna, if you're not watching this on YouTube, I'm gonna put on the show notes, it's SuzanneRedmond.com, and you just have to see her florals, because it has such great details on them. But then how did you decide, okay, I'm doing good, I'm feeling good about this, and now I'm going to try some abstracts? Because I see here that your abstracts, yes, there is some botanicals, but some of them, no, it's mostly very abstract shape. I love your use of color. You are like me, you like the strong, bold colors. And
I do.
I love this one because I'm a sucker for purple. I love this one that has this purple with the circles. I love circles as well. So how did you then decide to do that transition from, not transition, you paint both, but like you say, okay, I'm going to try abstracts now.
Well, I really think I started with abstract. I did abstract first. Yeah. And because that was just easy. There was I wasn't putting pressure on myself that this has to look like a bird or a tree. You know, it was just, I was flowing the paint on the paper and then seeing where the flows went. And then, and when I say flow, I don't mean like acrylic pour flow with my paintbrush, kind of flowing it around. And then I would outline that. And I would just use pens and outline that and follow I always let the background paint inform me where the foreground wants to go. So I don't have an idea until that background paint goes down. And then I decide what I'm going to do with it. So I started with abstract, but then I went into thanks. Yeah, I love the color combination. She was holding one up that's purple and kind of a pale yellow. And so I just made a ton of those abstract, and then I started doing the flowers. And I started with just like a single flower in the middle, or a couple of flowers just right in the middle. And then it wasn't until I did that big one where I did all the hundreds of little ones just covering the whole thing. But if you notice, when you look at it, the ones that are covered in flowers, so let's say I do a background and I'm using about, let's say, 6 colors. And so there might be 10 different swatches of color using 6 different colors. So some of them repeat. I might have some lavender in the bottom left corner and then some more in the top right corner. And then some pink and blue or something. So then when I put the flowers on, the flowers are going toward that patch. So every time I have a lavender patch, I do the same type of color of flowers. That's just what I do in my head. That's how I do my composition. And so because I've decided to do those colors, it's told me that I need to do 2 patches of one flower or 3 patches of the same flower. And flowers just came natural to me because I've always liked flowers. Always. So for example, when I got married a million years ago, I didn't care about what the cake, I didn't want one of these, buttercream frosting cake flower cake. I wanted fresh flowers on it. And then the fresh flowers for me and for myself and for the girls, each girl had a solid color. So kind of like how I do my paintings now. So one girl had a bouquet of nothing but these light blue flowers. One had dark purple, one had light purple. And then I had a little bit of everything. I had a mixture. So flowers have always been my thing. And so it was natural to start doing flowers on the paintings.
I love that you call them garden acrylics.
Yes, yeah.
Love that name.
I use that name because I think it's important to tell people what your medium is, that you are doing acrylics or oil or whatever. And garden is just a word that it's like I'm creating my own garden. So that's the important thing, that this is a garden, but it came from my imagination.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
So I'll put the link for her collections here. So you say here that you also have prints available so people can message you.
I do.
If they want prints of your art. And
yes.
Do you do them yourself or do you use a service?
I use a service, yeah. And all of my paintings are for sale. I just don't have the shopping cart set up on my website.
Yeah, it has here her email.
Right. You can email me if you're interested in anything. So yeah, I have a lot of prints. I've shown some work in some shows where you could do a basket of prints.
Yes.
And so that's why I got a lot of prints made. and I have a good source.
And do you use what kind of acrylic paint do you use? Is more like soft body or
No, both. Both. I use high flow. Well, no, high flow is a new category. Fluid, I guess is fluid. And then I also use the heavy body. I use a couple of brands. I use Golden mostly, but I've also used some Lucas Haas. Lucas Haas? Nope, that's an actor's name. Is that right?
There is a brand of paint called Lucas. Yeah,
Lucas Krill. Lucas Krill. Yeah, I think I was telling you the name of an actor from the 80s. Yeah. And so, and that one's a little thicker. So I have this white that's a Lucas Krill, and it's thicker, but then I'm using the more liquid colors, but then I'm mixing it with the white. So then it's making it like a heavy body color too.
So I want to show here, it's called Revealing and Releasing. And you can see it later on the website, but
yeah, I changed the name to that one. Yeah, I changed it to.
It is like a garden. It has so many kinds of flowers, but it has all these details and all these colors. So how long it takes you to do something like that?
Well, it took a couple of weeks, but that's, working probably 3 hours one day, 1 hour another day, when you can fit it in.
I bet it must be really relaxing to do all these little details.
It is. And I'll tell you why the pen work is relaxing, because when I set up to do painting, I put on paint clothes because I always get paint on my shirt. I always do. So I put on a shirt that's already got paint on it and everything. But when I do the pens, I don't have to change my clothes. I don't have to set up on a table, the whole thing. I put like an apron on my lap, because if you drop a pen, you'll get paint on your pants or something. But if I'm doing a smaller one, like a 16 by 20, I can sit there in front of the TV and just do the paint pens. I can do it anywhere in the house. In fact, in 2020, when we locked down in March, in Florida, we had this gorgeous weather in March, and everybody shut down. The kids were home from school. Nobody was working. Everybody was home. And so I set up a table in the backyard, and I painted out there. And I could just take just a 16 by 20 and a handful of pens and just work right outside, which was so much fun. So I like the portability of using the pens, that you can do it anywhere. Do it anywhere, anytime. You don't have to do a big prep. You don't need a cup of water. You don't need anything. Yeah.
And okay, so now let's talk a little bit about your podcast, because you have a podcast, and now how many episodes? 300?
228. And almost 230.
And it's weekly? It is weekly,
yes, every
right?
week. Yeah. Well, let me
so how do you get that idea?
Okay. So a few years ago, I want to say like in the 2008, 9, 10 time period, I had always been looking for an art retreat to go. I just thought that would be really fun. Have you heard of art retreats where you can go and take classes somewhere else? And so I'd been looking around, and it seemed like so many of them were on the West Coast of the United States, and I lived in Florida, and but I really wanted to go to one of these. So I found one called Art and Soul, which is the main one is in Portland, Oregon, and they still exist. They still do these retreats. Well, my brother lives in Portland, Oregon. And I thought, well, shoot, I can fly all the way across the country, but I can stay with him. I don't have to rent a car. I don't have to get a hotel. This will be an inexpensive way to go to this art retreat. And this one is a week-long retreat, and each day you pick a different class. So each day there's like 12 classes to choose from. So I went out there and I took jewelry classes, painting classes, collage, assemblage, all these fun classes. I'd take 6 different classes in a week. Well, I met all these artists from all over the United States by going to this, because you're in classes with, there were probably 500 people, attendees, but each class had like 30 or 20. And so I met all these artists, and this was before Facebook, but we all had blogs. We started blogs, and I had a blog back then, and we all followed each other's blogs. And I just thought, gosh, there's so many amazing, great artists out there. And then meanwhile, I got involved with the Palm Beach County art scene, and I started meeting all these amazing artists in Palm Beach County. And I got involved with doing art shows and networking, all this fun stuff with all these artists here. And I thought, well, gosh, my local friends need to know my national friends, and my national friends need to know my local friends. And I just always enjoy talking. I love talking to artists. So I thought, well, I loved podcasts. Why don't I start a podcast? I'll interview artists, and that way I'll introduce them to each other.
And what year was that?
2018. So I started around June 1st of 2018. And that was the year when I just started painting. 2018 and 19. I knew that if I had a podcast talking about art, people would want to see my own art. So they both started at the same time, where I was really going deep into developing my painting style the same time I was starting this podcast. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to point out something about the podcast. Mm-hmm. I do an interview with an artist once a week. Well, my first year, I did 2 a week. I would do, yeah, I know, right? So I did 100 episodes in the first year. I interviewed an artist on Wednesday, which is the way I do it now. And then on Friday, I would do this smaller business episode. So I would take one hint that artist talked about in their interview, and I would expand on it, just me. And so basically I was writing a 8 to 15 minute essay about some topic in art business, and I would just read that. I would say that on the Friday episode. So my first year, I did 2 episodes a week, and you can go back on my website. They're all on my website, so you can find those. So the odd numbers were artist interviews, and the even numbers were the business episodes. So there's 50 business episodes, and so one might be, what is a call to artists, and how do you respond to it? Another might be...
First, you just started with the local artists that you knew?
Well, no, I knew out-of-state artists, too. I knew national artists, too. So in order to feel confident that I could do this podcast and sustain it, I wanted to come up with, just brainstorm a list of how many artists, just so I wouldn't run out and then suddenly not have to skip a week or something. And so I brainstormed, and between my local and national, I came up with a list of 62 artists. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, that's good. 62, that's a week, that's a year's worth. I can start this. And so there were more local artists near the beginning, but it always started mixed. At my 3rd or 4th interview was somebody who I had taken a class, somebody from Washington State, who I'd taken a class with out in Oregon. There was another one from Oregon who I'd taken a class with her. So yeah, I just tapped into all those artists I knew.
How was the reception of the artists?
Well, at the beginning, I definitely went to my friends and said, would you like to be on this podcast? Because I thought for sure they would say yes. Because you're kind of nervous. And so then when I started contacting the national ones, I had to remind them, I met you 5 years ago when I took a class with you in Portland, I've been following your art career. I'd love to have you on my podcast. And so for them, it was just a very, very nice thing to say yes and be on this, because I was nobody at that point. I didn't have a lot of listeners. I think my first week I got 50 listens, which 50 was awesome. Well, now I'm getting 1,500 a week.
Wow.
So, yeah, so I really got to hand it to the ones who I interviewed at the beginning, because they kind of took a chance on me and said, okay, I'll do this. So that was very nice of them. Yeah.
Yeah. What did make you keep going? There were instances that you got tired or thought about, this is too much.
What? No, I love it. I absolutely love it. I just kept going because it was so much fun.
Yeah.
Now, after the first year, I realized I couldn't sustain doing the 2 episodes a week, because I was writing a 6-page essay once a week for 50 weeks, and it was a lot. And so after the first year, I said, okay, I'm just going to do the 1 artist interviews per week, But now I have archives of 50 business episodes that people can go back and listen to. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a pretty good chunk. So no, I didn't take any time off, really.
Did you have repeat artists in your show?
Well, I did, and I'll tell you why. So I did not repeat any artists from June of 2018 until April of 2020. Wow. So it was all unique artists. But then when we went down in lockdown, and artists, small businesses, self-employed, they lost all of their business, all of it. And I thought it seemed strange to call up an artist and go, hey, how's your business going? You want to be on my podcast? Because I knew it wasn't going. I knew there were a lot of artists who were struggling. Okay. So I kind of reframed it, and I said, I called the ones who had already talked to me once and been on the podcast before, and they knew me, they trusted me. And I said, do you want to talk for maybe 15 or 20 minutes and tell everybody what you're doing now that we've locked down? How have you changed? Have you pivoted? Are you doing something different? And so I came up with that idea on March 30th, I think it was. I sent out 12 emails, and 11 of them said yes.
Wow.
And one said no, and she said, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing yet. I'm doing nothing, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And I said, that's okay. I understand. And she said no. But the other ones, so what I did for a period of 2 months, so for 8 weeks, I did 2 smaller episodes a week. So for 8 weeks, I did 16 episodes, and those were repeats. And those were people saying, okay, most of my income came from in-person classes. And of course, now I can't do any in-person classes. I suddenly learned how to do online classes. Mm-hmm. There was another woman, Kelly Wynn, that I interviewed, and she said, I contacted 17 of my artist friends and said, hey, would you be willing to put together a little 15 or 20 minute how-to video on how to paint something? And I'd like to offer it to people for free. And I can't pay you for it, but I just want to put together a group of 17 friends. And she called it an art summit. Mm-hmm. And she offered it to free for people starting April, I want to say 15th or something. Mm-hmm. She had it available from April 15th through May 30th. And all of them said yes. And she put this together so fast. And she said, if you want to pay something, you can pay what you want. You can pay me $1 for 17 videos, or you can pay me $17 or whatever you want to pay, or you can pay me nothing. And she offered this for free because she knew that people were looking for something to do when we were first locked down. Mm-hmm. So these artists did a lot of clever, interesting things. I talked to another woman who owns a art retreat location as well as a retail shop for art supplies.
That was the hardest part, people that had retreats. Right. Some artists, most of their income come from the retreats.
Yeah. Well, she also had a retail space where you could buy your art supplies. Mm. And she came up with this. So she immediately started offering, hey, I can ship this to you. Mm-hmm. You can go online and you can order whatever you want. And she came up with this thing. This was Kristen Williams of Ephemera Paducah in Kentucky. She said, when I was young and I would be upset, my mother would say, oh, do you need a sussy? And I don't know if that was a made up word or what, but her mother would just give her some little trinket, some little treat to make her feel better. And so she decided to offer sussies. She said, this is a tough time. We're locked down. A lot of people can't work. Do you need a sussy? Let me know. Do you want a $20 sussy or a $10 or a $30 sussy? I'll put together a surprise package of art supplies and send it to you. And she did that and sold a whole bunch of them. Wow. By just sending a surprise package to people, whatever they wanted. So people were very clever. Yes. And so I did that for 16 episodes over 8 weeks. So all of April and May of 2020. And then I did a few more repeats after that, but went back to the one a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But but I think it's okay to have guests, more than one time, because artists evolve. and they
Yeah,
change in what
definitely.
they're doing, and they have new offers and,
Yep.
things that they are doing. So,
Yeah, but I don't want to repeat just for the sake of repeating, because there's a million artists out there. So I'm challenging myself to keep finding new artists. And I
it's
generally
amazing.
I generally look through Instagram, and I have two criteria when I'm looking for an artist. One is they have to actively be making art and trying to sell it in some way, whether they're selling the techniques through a class, or selling the actual art, or selling books because they've written about it, whatever it can be. But they have to actively be trying to sell it. So that takes out like hobbyists, someone who's just making art for fun.
Yeah.
And then the second criteria is they need to be easily found on the internet. And some people think they're easy to be found, and they don't realize that they're not easy to be found. Because I've had people contact me and say, hey, I love your podcast. Could I be on your podcast? And I look, and they're not on Instagram. They don't have a website. You can't find them anywhere. So if I can't find them, none of my listeners
selling
can.
art if people cannot find you?
Well, and they may not be selling art.
Okay.
That's
or maybe just
usually
local.
people who
I
are
don't
just
know.
contacting me saying, hey, I'm an artist. Can I be on your podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's just amazing that you get to talk with all these people. I myself, I don't even remember when I started listening, but it's been a while.
And
you have even, like, recently you have a person that paints wood, like she does wood furniture and she paints wood. So very unique artists as well that you can find. So
I'm trying to mix it up. I on purpose, I want it to be interesting to a lot of people.
It was really interesting to listen to her, and I never thought about, there's people that just paint wood.
Yeah, she paints furniture and ships them around the United States. Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah, I've interviewed a few mural artists, jewelry artists.
Yeah,
I really would like to find more ceramic artists.
I have to say, there's two things that I love related to art. Is jewelry. I actually, when I was younger, like on my end of my teenage years, I sold jewelry to kind of have an extra income, and I help a jeweler. She needs somebody to help her make more because she sells on art fairs. So, and then I took to school, to sell as well and things like that. So I love jewelry, especially bracelets. I'm obsessed by it. And I love pottery.
Me too. I love pottery. Love it.
So it just amazes me. I think I could never try because I have back issues. But I just love to look. I get so much inspiration from that.
Yeah, me too.
It's so it's amazing that you kept going. And what do you think? I know it's a hard question because you interviewed a lot of people, but I'll ask you two things. First, the bad things. What do you think is the main struggle that you see artists have when they talk to you?
I got to think about that. I don't know.
I think if I can, while you think about it, I think as a listener a long time, what I've been noticing with the new era of Instagram, I see some artists struggle when they talk to you when it comes to the Instagram part. I know you interview some that are really good on Instagram. They're doing reels and they're doing, but I see that for some, it's kind of like, why do I have to do that?
Well, and I think you kind of have a love-hate relationship with social media where you love it and you do it every single day for 20 days. And then you're just like, I'm so over it. And, why hasn't this gotten me more recognition or whatever? And then you skip it for a couple of weeks or something. And then you go back. So it's cyclical, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, do what works for you. I'm just impressed with all the different ways that people are using the internet. Like you putting videos on YouTube. And I was talking to somebody, or it might've been Dion, who is the painting furniture. Somebody was saying that Pinterest is great. They're getting a ton of business from
I'm a
Pinterest.
big fan of Pinterest.
Yeah.
And
I don't use
Pinterest.
it. I haven't.
Firmly believe.
Yeah. So
it takes time though. It takes time. I would say that.
Yeah, it does. I think one of the things, and it's not so much that they talk about it on my podcast, but people have trouble with the website. It's hard to find somebody who's going to help you set up your website, or if you do pay the big bucks and have them set it up, they don't really tell you how to add another painting, how to maintain it and expand it.
And they don't understand about SEO and this kind of things.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's a problem.
Yeah. I talked to an artist recently, and she was saying to me, she was asking me about SEO and stuff, and I was giving her some hints. And she's like, oh, I have to talk to the people that do my website. And I said, well, how do you know they're using the proper SEO for you? And she's like, I don't know. So, well, even if you can pay people to take care of your website, you have to know how to do things, because you have to check if they're doing the right thing for you. What if they're messing up your SEO? I told her, it's fine if you can pay someone to save that time, but you still have to know how to do things. Because what if, I don't know, that person is sick and cannot post something for you, or cannot update, or if your website is crashing and they can't get to you fast enough.
Right.
So, and she was like, who did your website? I said, myself.
Yeah.
Because I don't have anyone. Everything that you see me doing, I do. It's a one-woman show.
Yep, me too. Yeah, one-woman show. Yeah, with the podcast, with everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and that comes a lot of time that you waste learning this stuff. Not waste, but, you have to learn. And it's a time that, I would like to be all day painting. But if I'm the one responsible keeping my website going and things like that, So what is the thing that has inspired you so far with all these interviews?
What inspires me is how giving they are with their knowledge and information. So yes, they want to get money from teaching and get money from writing books about it, but you see all the content that they're putting on Instagram and on their website and blog posts and YouTube videos. They're giving away so much for free.
Yeah.
And it's not like, oh, if I give this, it's not like a sneaky way. If I give this free, then they'll want to buy something. No, they're just giving it free because they're generous, because artists are just amazing people and they just want to share what they know. And that's what's impressed me is just how much they are so giving to everybody else in the art world. It doesn't seem competitive in my opinion.
And also artists not going to do big bucks like people that play video games on YouTube or Stitcher, right?
Yeah.
So we are not doing this completely just for money. Of course, we need money because, as I said, we have to keep up these things. We have to keep our website. We have to buy supplies and everything. But I think artists are a unique breed of people because we do things more because we want to spread that love and that joy and want people to feel the same thing we feel when we produce their art.
Right.
I'm sure a potter, when they do a mug, they envision somebody sipping their coffee and have a good time with that beautiful mug, right?
Yeah.
And I think when you do the garden acrylics, you're thinking, wow, I want a little piece of garden on people's house. Right? Yeah. So I think we are unique in that sense. That, okay, I'm not just going to play video games to win money, right? Not wrong with that, but we can compare. I think that's the difference. I think it's, I kind of admire, and I hope I can get there with my podcast. And I admire a lot your podcast for a long time, just because of the consistency that you have.
Thank you.
And for all the great interviews you did so far. I'm still on babe steps and have to learn a lot how to do good interviews.
Well, it's, you also have to just say it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yes, in my interviews, I say a lot. I say a lot.
Yeah. Well.
And so what? People are still listening.
Yeah. When I was thinking, it's kind of like you, I was thinking, first of all, I wanted people to have that connection with people so they can understand my thinking better and what I want them to get from my art and from what I want to spread with my art, which is also the benefits of mental health and anxiety, to help with anxiety and depression. But I just love to talk as well, and especially love to talk with artists and geek about products and all this kind of things.
Right. Yeah.
And I like to keep it a conversation. And I have to say, in the beginning, when I thought about, I was like, I don't know, because I have an accent, and sometimes that can make you feel that, I don't know, you have all these stupid thoughts that people are not going to understand you and blah blah blah. But there is a point that is like, if it's in your heart, and whoever likes it is going to go over this stuff and is going to go forward and listen to it, right?
Right.
And I hope that they can listen and gain something that day with the podcast. Like I always with the artists that I get so surprised or inspired, or you have artists that are also psychiatrists, and all this kind of thing. So you always learn something, and you can admire something from that conversation.
Definitely. And I also like talking to artists from other countries, because they just have a different perspective on things. I've talked to artists a lot in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, Germany, England, Mexico, and they just have a different take on things too. So that's enjoyable.
And it's also interesting when we talk with people from Australia, New Zealand, these places, how they can get creative and with sometimes not all the supplies we have here. Because I think here we have too much.
Yeah.
Like if you want acrylic paints, right? Of course, the main, as no one, is Posca. But today you go to Amazon and you have 3 other brands of acrylic paints, right?
Right.
And sometimes they say that if they want to buy gold, and because of the shipping to Australia, to other countries, it can be more expensive. I mean, it's already expensive here. It's not cheap.
Right.
But they are doing work that is amazing.
It is.
And they can get other kinds of supplies that maybe we don't have here. But sometimes they say that, I wish we had this here, and I wish we had this here.
Yeah. And I know that in the last year, it was particularly hard because shipping was all screwed up. The post office, it was all messed up. People just, in Australia, they weren't able to get anything if it originated in the United States.
And the shipping also increased a lot. I actually stopped sending some things from my sister because the shipping increased so much. And but I was surprised actually that I bought a set of brushes from Rosemary & Co. that is from England, and they sent for FedEx. It arrived here in 2 days.
Oh, nice!
Yeah,
that's great.
And I didn't pay that much for the shipping, so I was like, but before I had in times of COVID I bought, and it took forever.
Yeah,
it took forever. So Suzanne, it was such a great conversation. I was curious about, to deep dive with you about the podcast, because as a longtime listener, you always like, how did she start it? How did that come up?
Well, and let me just interject real quick. To look at my timing, I started around June 1st, but I started around February. So February is when I started figuring out and doing the things for the podcast. But at the same time, I was creating my website from scratch because I knew I wanted to have a website to support the podcast and my art. So, I did 3+ months working very, very hard to get this ready. And now, flash forward a couple of years, now people can start a podcast and just do it on their phone. So I look back at, all the research I did, how to do it right. But, I read that you should be consistent and you should do it every week, that it should be around the same length, all these things. And so I took that to heart, and don't skip weeks or they'll forget about you. And it doesn't have to be that way, but that's how I chose to do it. And so I kind of got the rule book of how to do podcasts, and I did it exactly the way the rule book was. But that doesn't mean you have to do it that way. You can do it any way you want. Yeah. And since then, I ended up taking February of 21 off. I took a whole month off because in 32 months, I hadn't taken any time off at all. Yeah. So, I needed a month off, and I didn't do anything. I mean, I didn't.
And I think it's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
to me as a listener, I'm like, some podcasts, they say that, they say, look, we're going to have a break. And, some podcasts, they do seasons, so they have that break.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, it's okay. And then it's great when I see it pops up here on my feed. And so it's okay. And as you said, yes, at that time, people keep saying, some people still saying that. But at the same time, in my case, I think, it is what it is. I'm one person.
Yep.
I still have a young son. I have a lot on my hands. And
Right.
I
Yeah.
do what I can, And one thing is, I'm going to keep going. But if sometimes it's not every week, it's because life happened. And that's the way it is.
And you're putting your podcast on the podcast platform, but then you're also putting this conversation where you can see us on YouTube, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's a step I'm not doing. I'm not doing a video. I don't record the video of my podcast.
Before I was doing
Yeah.
I was doing just the audio on YouTube, but then I thought, I watch some podcasts on YouTube as well. I'm a podcast junk, and
Yeah.
and even though I'm doing some things and I'm listening, but it's nice to sometimes look and see them, and sometimes they show things or they have reactions. And I thought, people would like to see that. So whoever accepts, of course, I'm not gonna, if the person said to me, I don't want it, of course, I'm just gonna put the sound there. But I thought that would be nice for people to connect the voice with the person and see, because
Absolutely.
I like so much to see that on YouTube,
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, I do what I call show notes. So on my website, if you look under the podcast tab, you can see a list of the episodes, and then you can click on one, and I include 8 to 10 photos, a couple photos of the artist, a bunch of photos of their art, and then links so that you can get back to their website and social media. So I use my website as a companion to the podcast, where you can go and look at more pictures of the artist and their art, and then go find their website.
Yeah, I have as well on my. I think that is important, and also, of course, the podcast feed has. You can go back, but I think it's important to have on our website as well, so people can not just see the back episodes, but see all the notes and. And
right.
There's a couple of times, there's sometimes that I went to your website because you talked about something and I knew you're going to put the link there. So it is important. Sometimes we talk about products or things like that. And
I don't know if you know this, but once you get to they only keep about 100 of your episodes on a lot of the podcast platforms. So once you get above 100, they start knocking some off. So you can't find my business episodes, my first season interviews.
Oh, so that's
the only place
good as well
my
to put on the website. Yeah.
So,
I think, as you said before, I know some artists struggle with website, but it's so important to have a home that people can go and find everything that you do, what's going on with you. Because again, Instagram, all these things, they change all the time. Some platforms died that did social media, right? So we had platforms that are not here anymore. So
right.
And the website is important. And today, I have to say, there is if you're listening to this and if you're watching this, there are some platforms now that are so easy for you to build your own. I did my website with Squarespace. There is Wix. I did mine with Square. I used to do WordPress, and it's just. I know some people swear by WordPress, but it's just so much work and it's so clunky.
And I use WordPress. That's what I learned on. So I've heard others are easier, but I don't see any reason to change just because of that. Now that I figured it out.
But when I changed my business, I said I don't want WordPress anymore. I had so many issues with WordPress, and I went to Squarespace because it offers also a possibility to have a website and e-commerce. So, and it was such a great experience. I think especially for artists, because, Squarespace in particular, it goes to that kind of more visual artists. It's a website done for that. It's a platform for that, for more visual artists. So, anyway, the meaning is, don't get this not make you do your website. There is places out there that is easy to drag and drop, and you can have a simple website. You don't need to have all the, you can have that later. You can evolve. I'm always changing my website and I'm updating things. So don't feel that you have to have that particular, I can just start if I have a super duper website. No.
Right. Yeah. No, you don't have to have everything perfect to start.
So Suzanne, I'll put here again so people can go to SuzanneRedmond.com if they want to see your art and see all the beautiful things that we talked today. I'm going to put some things on the notes as well. And also they can look for the Left Brain Artist in all platforms that you can stream podcasts. So if you use Overcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and probably Google
Play,
everything. So
iHeart America.
You just search.
What is it? I love, not iHeart America. I love radio. iHeart Radio. That's what it is. iHeart Radio and Amazon.
Yeah. And if you are not sure, you can just Google the Left Brain Artist podcast, and you're gonna it's gonna show all the feed for you. And your Instagram is always the Left Brain Artist, right? Podcast for the podcast.
Yes. And then and then it's Suzanne Redmond Art for my personal art.
Yeah, I will link that as well. Suzanne, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure, to have the opportunity to meet you and to talk to you as a long-time listener. Yes,
thank you. This has been fun.
Yeah, it is.
And I
wonderful.
appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Yeah, and it was wonderful to learn more about your art and about the person behind the podcast. I appreciate it.
Well, it's been my pleasure too. Thank you.